Hello friends, welcome back to our channel NEET Biology Expert. I am Dr. Parveen. In this lecture series, we are studying class 12 biology genetics. In this particular lesson, we are going to study in detail about how to solve a pedigree analysis problem. This is a common, most important question given in the NEET examination. So you will be given a pedigree chart and you will be asked to identify what type of inheritance this chart denotes or represents. So at the end of this session, you will be able to know what are the different types of inheritance in which genetic diseases are inherited and how to solve a pedigree analysis using certain rules or guidelines. This is my promise. So without further wasting the time, let's get started. Look at this picture. What is this? This is a human cell with chromosomes, right? So we have 23 pairs of chromosomes. So out of these 23 pairs, 22 pairs are called as autosomes and the 23rd pair is called as the sex chromosome or allosome. So these chromosomes contain genes which are responsible for the inheritance of the characters from the parents to the offspring. This all we know, right? So as how the characters are inherited from parents to offspring, similarly, diseases or disorders also gets inherited. They are called as genetic diseases or genetic disorders. So, based upon how the diseases are inherited, through which chromosomes they are inherited, we broadly classify them into two categories. So, autosomal diseases and sex-linked diseases. Okay. So, there are four modes in which the genetic disorders are inherited from the parents to the offspring. So, two of them comes under autosomal chromosomes. Two of them comes under sex-linked chromosomes. That means genetic diseases, the genes for the genetic diseases are present on the autosomes. Okay. If the genes for that genetic disorders are present on the sex chromosome, they are called as sex-linked disorders. Okay. Again, these autosomal disorders are classified into dominant disorders and recessive disorders. So, what is dominant? You know that for every character, a gene is responsible and the gene are present in two different forms that we call as allele, right? So one allele comes from the father and another allele comes from the mother for a particular character. So, for example, if one allele has a defective gene, okay, so only that defective gene, this is the defective gene, right? So only that defective gene is enough to cause a disease. So such type of disorders are called as dominant. They are called dominant alleles, okay. Even one defective gene is present also, they would be able to cause the disease. That is called as a dominant. So, in order to have recessive disease, the gene must be present as two copies. Okay, so you have to have two copies of the defective gene. If only two copies, one from the father, one from the mother is present, then only the child will have the disease. So, such type of disorders are called as a recessive. Got it? So, similarly, it applicable for sex-linked dominant and sex-linked recessive disorders also. So, these are the four types in which the inheritance occurs. Genetic disorders gets inherited from the parents to the offspring. So, let's discuss each and everything in detail one by one. First, so what is the autosomal dominant type of inheritance? So, look at this picture. This is an example for autosomal dominant inheritance. Here, he is the affected father, is affected father. Okay, so we know that this affected person means that will be colored, dark shaded, right? Okay, so this orange color is the affected father. So look at his chromosome. He is having a pair of chromosomes. So one gene in that pair is mutated and another one is a normal gene. Okay, and she is unaffected. Mother is unaffected and she has two normal genes. Okay. So when they marry, what about their offsprings? How the offsprings will be, whether they will have disease or not. Okay. So here, if a father with autosomal dominant types of inheritance, he marries a normal unaffected mother. Okay. So the offsprings will be of this combination. That is, 2 out of the 4 kids will be affected and 2 kids will be unaffected. That means 50% of the child has the chance of having a mutated gene from the father and a normal gene from the mother. Okay, so that's why this child is affected. So even one copy of the gene, if it is present, then this child will be affected. Similarly, in this combination, 2 kids will be affected and 2 kids will be normal. Okay, so see here, one normal gene from the father will come here and one normal gene from the mother will come here. So this kid will be a healthy kid. Okay, so this is autosomal dominant type of inheritance. So see here, the mutated gene is a dominant gene. Whichever gene is mutated, that is a dominant gene. So it is located on the autosomes. Even if one mutated copy of the gene is present, that is enough to cause the disease. Okay, no need to have two copies. So that's why we call this as a dominant inheritance. So here there is no carrier stage at all. What is a carrier? Carrier means the person contains the defective gene or mutated gene, but they will not be affected of that, get affected of that disease. So that is called normally carrier stage. But here, even if one gene is present, they will be affected. So here, no carrier stage. The person is directly affected individual. Okay, so this is autosomal dominant type of inheritance. So this is the first example we have seen previous slide, that is the father is affected, the mother is normal. If that is just vice versa, that means if the mother is affected and father is normal, what would be the combination for the children? It will be the same because these genes are present on the autosomes. Okay, so exactly the combinations will be same for the offsprings. So look here, the mother is having one mutated gene and another is the normal gene. Here the father is having two normal genes. So what about the offsprings? So they will be having two affected kids, one daughter, one son, and another two kids. That is 50% will be affected, 50% will be unaffected. Okay, same type of combination will be there whether the father is affected or the mother is affected. So this type of inheritance is called as autosomal dominant type of inheritance. So here, what is the important thing we have to understand? What is the rules to say this is autosomal dominant inheritance is this type of inheritance never skips generation. That's why we say this is an autosomal disease. Okay, so this will be running in every generation. It won't skip generation. If the grandfather is affected, then the next generation father will be affected. Then the son will be affected. Grandson will be affected, like this. Okay, never skips generation. Second point is the children of affected parents might be unaffected. This is the most important point. So what do you mean by this? I previously told never skip generation. That means everybody will be affected? No. Person in the generation will be affected, but only 50% will be affected. Right? Look here. 50% children will be normal and the rest 50% only will be affected. So here the point is the children of the affected parents, even though whether mother or father is affected, they could able to produce healthy child. So this is one characteristics of the dominant, autosomal dominant inheritance. Okay, and both male and female are equally affected because these genes are present on the autosome. So both male and female has the same autosomes, right? Same genes are present. There is no difference. So both the sex are equally affected. So if you draw a pedigree chart for the autosomal dominant disorder, it will be like this. Okay. So this is a father who is affected. That's why it is shaded. Okay. Mother. If affected, it will be shaded, but the kids will be unaffected. So children of the affected parents might be unaffected. This is an important rule for autosomal dominant inheritance. So what are the examples for this type of inheritance? So in the examination, sometimes they will not give you the type of inheritance. They will give you a chart and directly they will give the name of the diseases. Okay, that means you have to study the name of the diseases, the examples for each and every type of inheritance. Okay, so example for autosomal dominant diseases are Huntington disease, neurofibromatosis, polycystic kidney disease, familial hypercholesterolemia. These are autosomal dominant diseases example. Okay, got it? Now let's move on to the second type, that is autosomal recessive type of inheritance. What is autosomal recessive type? See, we know that recessive means you need two copies of the defective gene. Okay, that is a clue for the recessive type of inheritance. So look at this picture here. Here, the father is a carrier. That means it's half shaded, right? So half shaded. He carries one mutated gene and another normal gene for any specific disease. Similarly, the mother is also carrier. She is also half shaded. Look here. She also contains one mutated gene and another normal gene. If this would have been Autosomal dominant inheritance, the parents will be here deceased, okay, because even one defective gene is enough to cause disease if that would have been an autosomal dominant type of inheritance. Whereas this is autosomal recessive type. So recessive type means it needs two defective genes, okay, but the parent has only one defective gene, the another thing is normal. So they are acting as carriers. So carriers means the father has the defective gene, mother also has the defective gene, but they will not be affected. They will not have any disease. They will not have any symptoms. Nothing. They look healthy. Okay, because the normal gene overtakes the function of the mutated gene in case of autosomal diseases. Okay, so the defectiveness will not appear phenotypically. They will be healthy. Okay, now what happens here? If these two carriers gets married, what about their offsprings? Okay, so what happens here? See, if they reproduce, so one defective gene from the father will come to one son and another defective gene also comes to the son. So this baby will be affected child. So one son will be an affected child. Okay, and one daughter will be a normal child. So one X chromosome from the mother healthy will come and another X chromosome from the father which is healthy also will come. So one daughter will be healthy. Okay, and two kids, one son and another daughter, they will be carriers, same like that parents. They will not have any disease, whereas they will carry the disease and they will pass on this disease to their next generation. Understand? So this type of inheritance is called as autosomal recessive type of inheritance. Look here, these disorders are passed on by two carriers. You need two carriers to pass this disorder to the next generation. Not only one carrier is enough. Okay. So two mutated genes from each parent must be inherited. So the chance of having the disease for the next generation will be 25% of the child will have two normal genes with unaffected. 25% of the child have two recessive genes who is affected. And 50% of the child will be unaffected and they will act as a carrier. Okay, right? So this is autosomal recessive type of inheritance. So what is the rule? How do we say this is autosomal recessive type of inheritance? So here the key points are they skip generation. Dominant diseases never skip generation. They run in every generation, whereas this recessive disorders, they skip generation. So the father, mother, this generation, they don't have the disease. They are acting as a carrier. Whereas these kids, they have the disease. And these two kids, they will pass the disease to the next generation, right? So like this, it skips one generation after another. So skip generation. Then the next important point is the children of the unaffected parents might be affected. This is an important point to identify in the pedigree chart. Okay, so if you draw a pedigree chart for this type of inheritance, it will be like this. See here, the father is unaffected, the mother is unaffected, whereas their child, one child is shaded. She is affected, the another boy is unaffected. So what do you understand from this chart? The children of the unaffected parents might be affected. So the parents are unaffected, whereas the child is affected. How she got affected? Because the parents are carrier. They pass the defective gene. Okay, got it? Here also both male and female are equally affected because they are present on the autosomes. So the example for autosomal recessive inheritance, this type of diseases are cystic fibrosis, sickle cell anemia, Tay-Sachs disease and phenylketonuria. So this is second type autosomal recessive inheritance. Let's move on to the second category, that is sex-linked inheritance. What is sex-linked inheritance? If the diseases are transmitted through sex chromosome, that is called sex-linked inheritance. We know that sex-linked inheritance are of two types because there are two types of sex chromosomes, right? So we have X and Y chromosomes. Hence, the sex-linked inheritance are of two types, X-linked inheritance and also Y-linked inheritance. Okay, there are two types, X-linked inheritance and Y-linked inheritance. But in case of human beings, generally, when we talk about sex-linked inheritance, we usually take this word, that is X-linked inheritance. Why? Because look at this picture. This is human chromosome, sex chromosome. So the X chromosome, the size of the X chromosome is much larger when we compare it to the size of the Y chromosome. Y chromosome is much smaller. It contains around only 200 genes. Okay, so in this 200 genes, only one gene, two gene will be a defective gene. So the number of the defective genes or the defective disorders present in the Y chromosome is very rare. So it is a rare trait, Y chromosome disorders. Okay. So generally, genetic disorders, that will sex-linked disorders, means we tell X chromosomal disorders. That's why we call X chromosomal disorder or X-linked disorder, rather telling Y-linked disorder. Okay. So if we tell specifically Y-linked disorder, that means Y-linked disorder only there are few diseases which we will be discussing later. Got it? Okay. So since X chromosome size is larger and contains many more genes than the smaller Y chromosome, so generally we call the sex-linked inheritance means X-linked inheritance. Okay. And here the sex-linked inheritance usually affects male more compared to the female. Why? Because female, we have two copies of the X chromosome. Okay. So if one copy of the X chromosome has a defective gene, say look at this picture. If this is a defective gene for a particular disease present on the X chromosome, she has another healthy copy. So this will overtake this function. Okay. So here she will not be affected. She will act as a carrier. Understand? So generally, this type of disorders are common in male. Why common in male? Because male has X and Y chromosome. So look here, if there is a defective gene in his X chromosome, only one copy of X chromosome is there. Okay, there is no other copy. The another is Y chromosome. So if this is a defective gene, it will be expressed. It will be the dominant gene also. So the disease will be expressed. So that's why in case of sex-linked inheritance disorders, males are more affected than the females. Okay, understand? So here the sex-linked inheritance is also called as X-linked inheritance. So let's see the third type, X-linked dominant inheritance. So what is dominant inheritance? What is this characteristics? Suppose, look at this picture here. The father is unaffected. He is having X chromosome with normal healthy gene. Whereas the mother is affected. She is having X chromosome with one copy of the affected gene or the defective gene and another copy normal gene. Okay. So here we call her as affected mother. So you may be asking now, ma'am, just now you told if one healthy gene is there for the female, the other gene if mutated, so the healthy gene will take over the function, she will act as a carrier, right? Just now I told. No, that is not same for dominant and recessive disorders. So what do you mean by dominant disorders? Dominant means two copy of the allele, even if one copy of the allele is a defective, that will exhibit its function. That means that will show its character. So the disease will be shown. Okay. So that's why here, if this is a disease gene, if that is a dominant disorder, so this disease gene will express. Okay. So that she will be affected, rather acting as a carrier. If she acts as a carrier, this type of inheritance is called as recessive. That's we are going to see next. Okay. So here, that's why we call this as a dominant. So why dominant? Even if the mother is having only one defective gene in the X chromosome, that will be expressed. Okay. What about the offspring? So mother is affected, father is unaffected. What about the offspring? So here, two kids, one daughter and one son, they will be unaffected, and one daughter and one son will be affected. Okay, this is the nature of this type of inheritance. So look here, the X-linked dominant inheritance occurs when an abnormal gene, that is defective gene, from one parent causes the disease, even though the other matching gene from the other parent is normal. So here the abnormal gene dominates over the other. That's why we call this as a dominant type of inheritance. So suppose if the mother is healthy, the father is having a defective gene, because father also has X chromosome, right? So what about that situation? So look at this picture here. The father is affected because father contains X and Y chromosome. If there is a defective gene present on that X chromosome, what will be the situation? Okay, here the mother is unaffected. She has two healthy X chromosomes. So here look at this offsprings. Two sons, two sons will be unaffected. If the father has a defective gene, two sons will be unaffected. Okay. Why? Because compulsorily one Y chromosome will be from the father, right, to each kid, and one X chromosome will be from the mother. That will be healthy, right? So they will be healthy. And what about daughters? So out of this daughters, compulsorily one X chromosome is given by the father, right? So that itself is a defective chromosome, right? So the daughter has an X chromosome with a defective gene and one healthy chromosome from the mother. So she is an affected individual. Similarly, this daughter also receives one defective gene with X chromosome from the father and one healthy X chromosome from the mother. She is also here an affected daughter. Okay, so this is how the scenario will be. Okay, so look here, if the mother is affected, okay, then one daughter and one son will be affected. Whereas if the father is affected, both his daughters will be affected. So this is a specific type of inheritance pattern which we could see in the X-linked dominant type of inheritance. So that's why here the rule for the dominant type of X-linked inheritance is number 1. It never skips generation. That means each offsprings in the generation is getting affected. Number 2. All the daughters of the affected father will be affected. This is the important point you should remember. Okay. So look here, this daughter is also affected. This daughter is also affected. So how many daughters the father is producing? All the daughters will be affected. All the girls will be affected. Okay. Disease never pass from father to son. This is also another rule. Okay. Disease never pass to father to son. Males will not be affected from the father. If the father is affected, the disease will not be passed from the father to son. This will not occur. Only if the mother is affected, the disease spreads from mother to the son. Okay, so this is called as X-linked dominant type of inheritance. So when you draw a pedigree chart for this, look here, this is father who is affected, mother unaffected. So they are having 4 kids, 3 daughters and 1 son. All the daughters will be affected. So the chart will be like this. So this is called X-linked dominant. So example for this is vitamin D resistant rickets, Rett syndrome, Gold syndrome, X-linked dominant porphyria, Aicardi syndrome. So these are some examples you must remember. Okay, right. Let us move on to the 4th type of inheritance, that is X-linked recessive type of inheritance. So here, how this will be inherited. So see here, X-linked recessive. That means the mutated gene or the defective gene is present in the X chromosome. Okay, that too X chromosome of the mother only. So here, the mother acts as a carrier. She will not be affected person here. Why? If she is affected, then we call this as a dominant type. Okay, since this is a recessive type of disorder, even if one mutated gene is there, the other normal gene will take over the function of the mutated gene. So she will be looking normal. She will not have any problem or any disorder, but she acts as a carrier. So this type of inheritance is called as X-linked recessive. Okay. So look at this situation. The mother is a carrier. She has one mutated gene and one normal gene, whereas the father is a normal father. He is having a normal X chromosome and Y chromosome. Okay. So what about the offsprings here? So here, one daughter will be unaffected, one son will be unaffected. Okay. Here, one son will be affected. How? Because this X chromosome from the mother, okay, and the Y chromosome from the father will be present here. Okay, so the defective X chromosome from the mother and the normal Y chromosome from the father will be present. So here, since the X chromosome copy is only one, since there is no another copy, okay, so this X chromosome which is defective will get dominated and it shows its disease. That's why this boy is having disease. He is affected individual. Got it? Understand? So he is the affected son, whereas carrier, similar things happens like one defective X chromosome from the mother and this healthy X chromosome from the father comes. Okay, this girl will not have disease now. She will act as a carrier because this is a recessive disease, right? So only the males are affected. We said no, in the X-linked disorders, males are affected. This is a important reason. Okay. So they have only one copy of the X chromosome. That's why they are affected. Got it? So see here, in the case of X-linked recessive inheritance, the female carrying a mutated gene will be unaffected. They act as a carrier and they pass the gene to the next generation. Whereas if it is a male, he will be the affected person. Male cannot be carrier in case of X-linked recessive disorders. Okay. So look at this picture. What is this? Here, the mother is a carrier. If the defective gene is present on the X chromosome, then this father is no more a carrier father. We call him an affected father. He will be having disease because only one copy of the X chromosome is present, right? This mother is unaffected. So if an affected father marries an unaffected mother, what about their kids? Okay, so all the sons here will be unaffected. How? Because the father will provide one healthy Y chromosome and the mother carries two healthy X chromosomes. Okay, so all the male will have healthy chromosomes XY, XY. Whereas here in case of daughters, the father will provide a defective X chromosome. The mother will provide healthy X chromosome. So one defective gene is there. Understand? So since this defective gene is present alongside with the healthy gene takes over its function. So she will not be an affected individual. She will be the carrier. Got it? So these two daughters will be the carrier. They will carry this disease to the next generation. So she will act as a carrier and pass this disease to the next generation. That means she will produce a deceased son in the next generation. Like this example, like this. So this deceased girl produce a deceased son, right? Similarly, this situation will happen here. Okay, understand? So male carrying a mutated gene will be affected because they have only one X chromosome. So example for the X-linked recessive disorders, very, very, very important, color blindness and hemophilia A. These two are the important examples. Okay, understand? So what is the key point here? Key point in the case of X-linked recessive disorder is males are more affected. Okay, so see here, males are affected. Here, male is affected. Okay, so females are not affected. They act as a carrier. But crisscross pattern of inheritance occurs. What is crisscross pattern? The disease will be present in the grandparent. It will not be present in the parent because parent acts as a carrier. Then it will be passed to the children. Okay, this is crisscross. So, if you draw a pedigree chart for this, this will be like this. See here, this blue shaded one is the affected father. Okay, so this is an unaffected mother. So, they are having 3 kids, 2 boy and 1 girl. Okay, so this girl is marrying a normal man, whereas they have one affected boy. How? Because the defective gene from the father is transmitted to the daughter. So, the daughter here acts as a carrier. So through this daughter, it passed to the next generation. So it skips the generation. Males are more affected. Daughters are the carrier. This is called crisscross type of inheritance, which is called as X-linked recessive type of inheritance. Okay. So look at this chart. This is the comparison of all these 4 disorders what we have seen so far. Okay. See here, autosomal dominant means it involves a dominant allele which is present on the autosomes. Similarly, autosomal recessive means it is due to a recessive allele present on the autosome. Okay. X-linked dominant means a dominant allele is present on the X chromosome. X-linked recessive means a recessive allele is present on the X chromosome. Okay. Next, carrier stage. In both the dominant type of disorders, that means both autosomal and X-linked dominant, we will not have any carrier stage. So whoever is having even one defective gene, they are called as a deceased person. No carrier stage at all. That's why we call this as a dominant. Whereas here in the recessive, in the both X-linked and autosomal recessive, carriers are present. Okay. In the autosomal recessive, the carriers could be either male or female because the genes are present on the autosomes. Whereas in the X-linked, the carriers will be only female because the genes are present on the X chromosome. Got it? Then, these are the important 4 points which you must remember in order to find out what type of pedigree analysis a chart is given in the examination. Okay, so that's why we call this as the rules to find out the pedigree analysis. Okay, so let us see the rules. The first one, if it is an autosomal disease, okay, autosomal dominant means never skip generation, never skip generation. Similarly, X-linked dominant, okay, so any dominant type of inheritance means the disease will be present in every generation, whereas if it is a recessive, autosomal recessive or X-linked recessive, it skips generation. This is one point to be remembered. Point number 2, this is autosomal diseases, right? So both male and female are affected. Both male and female are equally affected in case of autosomal dominant and autosomal recessive. Okay. Whereas in the X-linked dominant, females are more affected. In the X-linked recessive, males are more affected. This is second point. Point number 3. Two affected parents can have unaffected children. Okay. Parents are affected, both father and mother affected, but they could able to produce healthy children. This is autosomal dominant. And another point, unaffected parents can have unaffected children. This is a normal thing. Parent is not having disease, so the kid is not also having disease. This is also dominant. Okay. If even one parent is having disease, then it will be recessive. Understand? Okay. See here, this point is just opposite of the third point. That means here we saw two affected parents can have unaffected children. Here, in case of autosomal recessive disorder, unaffected parents can have affected children. Parents are unaffected. They don't have any disease, but the kid will have disease. How? Because the parents are carrier. Each parent provide one mutated gene. So the recessive gene will come to the child. So child will be affected. This is the point. Okay. Then in case of X-linked dominant, dominant means the disease will never pass from father to son. Disease will never pass from father to son, whereas all the daughters of the affected father will be affected. Because father will provide the defective X chromosome to the daughters. Okay, so all the daughters of the affected father will have their disease. Okay, and last point, in case of X-linked recessive diseases, disease will never pass from father to son, whereas there will be a crisscross pattern of inheritance. That means it skips generation. From grandfather, it goes to grandson. So these are the 4 important points which we call as rules you must remember in order to find out the pedigree chart. Okay, what type of inheritance it is. So let us see some examples. So let's see some examples. Look at this pedigree. What type of pedigree this is? What do you see here? The parents, both the parents are affected, whereas the child is unaffected. So where this rule comes? Autosomal dominant. Okay. Two affected parent can produce a healthy child, that is unaffected child. Autosomal dominant. Look at this picture. This picture. What type of pedigree this is? So this is also autosomal dominant. So see here, two affected parent have unaffected child. Okay. So they have two unaffected child. If there is a third child, that would have been affected. That is not shown in the picture. We don't worry about that. Okay. So this follows the rule, that is two affected parent can have unaffected child. So this falls under the autosomal dominant type of inheritance. So look at this picture. What is this picture shows? Here, this is also a classic example for autosomal type of inheritance. Okay. So see here, two affected parent can produce an unaffected child. This is one. Okay. And here we could not say anything because the mother is affected, so the girls are also affected. We cannot predict anything. But there is another clue. See here. Two unaffected parent can produce unaffected offsprings. So where you have this rule? Here. Two unaffected parents can have unaffected offsprings. That is the typical characteristics of a dominant type. Okay. Dominant type means parents are unaffected, so kids are also unaffected. This falls here, right? Then see here, both male and female are equally affected, right? So here two affected parents can have unaffected children. So since it falls under this rule, so this is an example for autosomal dominant. we have 3-4 rules for each type of inheritance, right? So even 1 or 2 rules are shown in the figure. It is applicable, means we can very much with confidence write this. Okay, so this is autosomal type of inheritance, right? Let us move on to the next example. So look at this. What is this? Here, two parents, both are unaffected, but the child is affected. So two unaffected parents can produce an affected child. So where do you see this rule? This is an example for a recessive disease. Okay, recessive. The parents are carriers. So from each carrier, the defective gene came to the child. That's why this is affected. So this is a recessive disorder, autosomal recessive disorder. Okay. So look at this picture. What do you see from this? This is also autosomal recessive disorder. Okay. See here, male and female are equally affected. Okay. See here, two unaffected parents can have an affective child. Here you could see. And again here, two unaffected parents can have an affected child. Okay. So these two follows this rule. So this is an example for autosomal recessive disorder. Let us see the next example. Okay, so look at this pedigree. What are you able to interpret here? Here, the mother is unaffected, the father is affected, right? So from the father, the defective gene is passed to both the daughters, not to the son. So the affected father passes the gene to the daughters only, not to the son. So what is this type of inheritance? This is X-linked dominant, right? There is another clue for this. That is, two parents are affected, whereas one child is unaffected. So two affected parents can give rise to unaffected child. So what is this type? This is a dominant pedigree, right? So this is a dominant, okay? And here the father is passing the genes only to the daughters, not to the son. So this is X-linked dominant type of inheritance. Okay, so the females are more affected. Disease never passes from father to the son. All the daughters of affected father will be affected. So this follows the rule. Okay, understand? Look at this picture. This is a very simple pedigree by which you could say the defective gene from the father goes only to the daughters, not to the son. All his 4 daughters are affected. So this is example for X-linked dominant. Similarly, here you see they have 3 generation, 1, 2, 3 generation. Okay. So from the first generation, from the father, it goes to one baby girl and another girl and another girl. 3 kids, 3 female, right? So from the father, it goes to the all female. So this is also X-linked dominant type of inheritance. I hope you understand, right? Now, let's move on to the next step. What is this type of pedigree? So see here, there are 3 things. Here one family, here one, okay. So from this we could not conclude anything because the parents are affected, the kids are also affected. So there is nothing information we could able to get from this, okay. Whereas if you see here, the parents are unaffected, whereas the child is affected. So what type this is? If parents are unaffected and the child is affected, that is recessive, right? Recessive type of inheritance. There is one clue. Then, what recessive? X-linked or autosomal? Here you see, the mother is affected, the father is unaffected. They have 1, 2, 3, 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 girls. Both the boys are affected. So, from the mother, the gene goes to both the boys. Okay. So, mother to son. So, what type of inheritance? This is X-linked inheritance. From the mother, disease passes to all his sons. Okay. This is X-linked recessive type of inheritance. Okay. See here, males are more affected. Disease transfers from mother to son. That is present here. Okay. Father to daughter is not shown anywhere here. Here father is there but no daughter is shown. Here the father is not deceased. Here father is there, daughter is there, but the mother is also deceased. So we could not conclude. So this is not shown in this picture. Okay. So from the mother, the disease goes to all his son. Disease never pass from father to son. That is also not shown in this picture. So these two rules are applicable. So this is an example for X-linked recessive disorder. So look at this picture. This picture is also a very good example for X-linked recessive disorder. How? Because the father is affected, the kids are unaffected. Okay, but the third generation, in the third generation, this is number 1, number 2, number 3, right? So in the third generation, the grandson is affected. So from the grandfather, the disease gene goes to the mother. So mother here acts as a carrier, and from the mother, the grandson is affected. So directly the gene is not coming from father to the son. It skips generation. Okay, so it skips generation. Males are more affected. Disease never pass from father to son. Crisscross pattern of inheritance. This is crisscross, like this. So from the grandfather to mother and mother to the son. Okay, crisscross. Father to daughter. So like this. This follows the rule. Okay, so that's why this is an example for X-linked recessive type of inheritance. So far we have seen the 4 different patterns of inheritance. There is another pattern, that is Y-linked inheritance, because we have seen the sex chromosomes has 2 types, right? X-linked and Y-linked. So majority of the genetic disorders are passed through X chromosome since the size is large. Few are passed through Y chromosomes also. They are called Y-linked inheritance. Okay. So let us see what is the character of this. See, if a father is affected, the genes are present only on the Y chromosome. Okay, just see the Y chromosome. If the defective gene is present on the Y chromosome, all his sons will be affected. How many sons he is producing? 2, 4, 8, 12. All those sons will be having the defective gene because only one copy of the Y chromosome is present, right? So all the boys will be affected. So this is called as Y-linked inheritance. So what are the characters? Y-linked inheritance involves a defective allele on the Y chromosome. They do not skip generation. In each generation, the males are affected because they receive a copy of the defective Y chromosome from the father. Okay, so pass from father to the son. Only males are affected, but this is a very rare trait. So example for this is hypertrichosis of the ear, webbed toes, porcupine man, retinitis pigmentosa. What is hypertrichosis? If you see the ear of some males, you could see the hairs coming out like this from the earlobe. Okay, so this is called as hypertrichosis. This is also a genetic inheritance. Webbed toes means in the toes will be clubbed. Okay, so like this. These are some examples for Y-linked type of inheritance. Okay, so if you see the pedigree for this, you could easily identify. See here, affected male pass this to the next son, then from his father to the son. So it goes generation after generation only among the males. If the father is not affected, then the disease or disorder won't spread to the next generation. Okay, so this is Y-linked type of inheritance. So look here, here also the father is affected. Okay, so all the male in the first generation is affected. Similarly, from the affected male, all the male in the second generation is also affected. These 2 males are from another family, so that's why they are unaffected. Got it? So this is Y-linked type of inheritance which we could easily identify. So I hope this lecture is clear for you. If you have any doubts, please post your doubts in the comment section. So if you like this lesson, like, comment, share and subscribe to our channel NEET Biology Expert. In our next session, we will be discussing, there will be some shortcuts to solve the pedigree problems that we will discuss. Take care. Thank you.